Paul talk back and forth?
I could.
Okay, good. So then he can hear us. That's great.
Okay.
I was like, I've actually never done it where I had someone else on the line as a guest watching us do it. So I was
Oh,
like, we'll see if it works, but it
yeah.
does.
It
So
could. It could be exhilarating and creepy and everything we've always hoped.
well, for those that don't know, my name is Mike the Intern. I work with 104.7 The Cave, and I am very happy to have on my show today the incredibly talented, hilarious Jeremy Piven, who is coming to be in Springfield this Friday and Saturday, Blue Note Comedy Club here in Springfield. But before we get into that stuff, I want to tell you that you are in one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is called One Crazy Summer. Does anyone ever say that to you?
I no one's ever. I don't know if anyone's ever said it's their favorite movie.
One
I
of
mean,
my
it says a
favorites.
lot about you.
Oh, I mean, I'm a
You're a
child
man
of the,
child.
I'm a man child of the 80s, and for some reason that movie was on all the time in the infancy of HBO. And I think there was a picture I drew in kindergarten of a character named Hoops based off of that show or that movie, which is
Yeah,
great.
I mean, this is a lot of stuff that your listeners have no reference for. So this, you know what that's the sound of, Mike? That's the sound of people turning off this interview.
Or them going, what is Mike talking about? One Crazy Summer, guys. I'm telling you, go watch the movie One Crazy Summer. It is insane, but it is probably
Mm,
one of my favorite '80s hijinks movies of all
right
time.
on.
It's amazing. So thank you for that. Also, a massive fan of PCU, and the DVD commentary that you did on that was probably one of my favorite commentaries that I've ever got. And that was just by chance; it just kept rolling, and I heard it. And you just basically walked into a room and did it. It's what it sounded like to me.
Well, that was the old me, and no, seriously, man, because I am my father's son. I speak the truth as I know it, and as my mother said, who passed away recently, she said, people don't know what to do with the truth. So you might just keep it to yourself. They don't know how to process it. And that's one of those cases where, like, I was uh I it was look, and this will lead us to why I'm coming to Springfield. I'm an improvisational, comedic actor, and I've been lucky enough to be in 80 movies, and I've been around, and I know that when you're doing a comedy and you have sketch comedy actors like myself, you got to let them run a bit. And I was not allowed to run and improvise, and I had to stick to the script, which was great. It's a great script. And what if on a just one take, I give them 116 options? They may all be terrible, but then my frustration kind of led to that DVD, and it was not very diplomatic. It was not politically correct for politically correct university. The film.
But it was so on brand for what that movie is and what you are. And I just, again, like I was like, God, I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I don't even think I've even listened to the commentary before. But let's see what it said. Man, we were like 10 minutes in. I was like, this is hilarious.
And you know what, they people ask, I have to say, they ask all the time, every time I tour, they now that I think about it, they do love that movie. They don't say it's their favorite film of all time, but they say, why we love it, we can't find it anywhere. And what's interesting is, and this is a much longer conversation, it's about the absurdity of the obsession to protest and at anything, and the irony of this film is thick. And at one point they protest saying, we're not gonna protest.
Protest.
You know what I mean? So and now we're dealing in a time where, here's my film, The Performance, where I play a Jewish tap dancer that dances, hides his identity and dances for Hitler. And people were leery of this film. It takes place in 1937. It's a work of fiction. It's Arthur Miller, a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And they're going, hold on a second, Jeremy. There are people protesting on campuses. And we're going, well, that doesn't have anything to do with this work of fiction. This work of fiction that Arthur Miller wrote pre-Holocaust
Oh, yeah.
has nothing to do with Israeli politics. You know what I mean? So that's a whole other thing I need to unpack once the film comes out. Um, but yeah, that goes to the absurdity. I felt like I was living in PCU again. Some 18-year-old kid in Rancho Cucamonga, is protesting with a little sign, and they don't want to release my film that it took me 15 years to make, and I broke 8 ribs doing it. So it's like it's absurd. I'm going to be in the Blue Room. Wait, Mike, are you in Springfield?
I am.
Nice. I'm going to be at the Blue Room this weekend.
Yeah, Friday and Saturday. Really excited about it. And again, as an improv, I'm assuming that this is basically what you do. It's a flow of thought, the flow of consciousness, if you will.
Every stand-up comedy set should feel as if it's totally
I
improvised.
agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah, and the reality is you always have a framework of what you need to touch on, how you need to land the plane, all that stuff.
Mhm.
You talk about, wow, man, I'm getting older. This is how you know you're getting older. I used to look at a woman in a short skirt and I'd be like, wow, she's hot. Now I'm like, I wonder if she's cold. And then you go into that stuff,
Yeah.
and okay, then I'm going to go into dating, then I'm going to go to set life, my mother, blah blah blah, entourage, and then everybody wins.
Yeah. I've always tried to describe it as because I'm a musician, the way jazz musicians approach improv together.
Yeah.
You have your framework, you have your bass chord progression or a melody line, and then everything else goes on about. You can come back to that if you want to, but the flow of consciousness and what leads to other things is through the same thing. Instead of using notation, you're using verbiage and words instead of notes.
Yeah, exactly. It does have a through line. I guess without sounding pretentious, it is like jazz. You know that you have to follow a certain path, but there's improvisational ways to go down that path. So yeah, all roads lead to stand up for me, and it's the scariest. Even though I've been on stage since I was 8 years old, you know, um, it is an amazing place to test yourself, because it can all go wrong at any moment, and that's like Chappelle says, you get paid for the attempt. That being said, I grew up in the theater in Chicago next to you guys, and I understand the responsibility of being on stage and making you guys laugh. So, it's my job. People, the they don't know that I do stand up, so they're gonna, you can, like, lots of clips on YouTube and whatnot, and you can be a fan of any of the movies I've done or Entourage, and you're gonna have to make that leap of faith. But people, no one leaves standing ovations, and I'm having a great time.
That's what it's all about. I do want to ask you too about the performance, which I think, from what I'm getting from you, is definitely a labor of love. I mean, anything that takes you 15 years of your life to make has to be that. What kind of got you onto this? Like, this is my thing. This is my passion project. This is my baby, and I want to put everything I can behind this thing.
Um, my mother was a voracious reader, gave me the short story, the performance, and said, "There's a role in there for you." And when my mom says something, it has weight because she means it. And I read it and was totally blown away, and immediately went to his daughter, Arthur Miller's daughter, Rebecca Miller, and got the rights. And my sister said, "I'd love to adapt it." And I'm telling all the secrets right now, um, because with the brother sister relationship, I think people, once you reveal the true nature of how it all went down, you know. Uh, anyway, she adapted it and directed it brilliantly, and I produced it and starred in it, and it's the best work of my life. And unfortunately, it's incredibly topical because we're dealing with uh, some different type. We're in a time right now, not unlike the beautiful comedy PCU, where people are taking to the streets and protesting. And I grew up in a very liberal household, and they were very focused on. They knew intrinsically that there wasn't an even playing field, and that minorities didn't have the same shot as white people. And so there were people of color in all of our plays. And this is not a performative gesture on my parents' part. There was no Twitter. You know what I mean? They were doing it because it was the right thing. So and they wouldn't preach it. I just watched and learned. And I was lucky enough to be, at a school that was incredibly integrated and the only white boy on my football team. And part of what I think racism is, not part, I think what it is the lack of knowledge about someone
100%.
else's culture.
100%.
So
100%. And I,
I was very lucky in that way, and I got to see that. And the same thing with the Jewish culture. There's so many different layers and variables as to what's going on, and it's just everyone's like, it's very clear cut. Here's the oppressor. Here's the oppressed, and it's like, well, I think it's a little more complicated than that. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And if you're not open to that, then there's a problem. Let's
Mhm.
all listen to each other and get to the truth. And so we're at a time right now. I don't know how I got, man. I'm on one this morning. Sorry.
My fault. I said, let's talk about One Crazy Summer. And then that was
Yeah.
on down the road.
Well, I mean, one crazy summer was when I was a child, and now I'm on to something that is the work of my life. And you asked me why. And I think the why is because, I'm so lucky to be working and to do what I love. And you have to create your own opportunities for yourself. And this is one of those situations where I had to pay for the rights every year and it wasn't cheap. And people just wanted me to give up. They thought, it's not going to happen, man. You're 5, 10, 15 years into it, and I'm still paying. And like, I didn't want to give up because I didn't want to give up on myself,
Hmm.
to be honest with you. And so what I have is the best work of my life. And isn't it interesting that it's something that I found and nurtured, and it's a family project, and it's something that I put together instead of going and looking and auditioning and hustling, which is all part of the game. And the reason why, to be honest with you, so many people either don't want to be an actor or it just doesn't work out is you got to be able to deal with rejection.
And the hustle that never ever stops. And a guy that's been in this business as long
Man,
as
I
you
hope
have,
it does.
still, well, but that's the
Man,
thing.
I hope it
I mean,
does.
you
I'd like to,
look.
I'd like to work a little smarter and a little less harder.
Well, I was going to say that the thing. I
Please, for the
mean,
love of God.
12 years of tap dancing lessons, which is insane. I mean,
Yeah.
you still tap dancing? I mean, hell, I'd be popping that. I'd be wearing those shoes all the time and just, okay, you just want to see something? And giving my best friend a stare.
Well, I mean, I tap dance in elevators, anywhere I can.
I would
A-
all the time.
And and it's interesting because at first they were like, "Are you okay? Is there something wrong with you?" They were concerned that maybe I had some affliction. And then as I got better, I started hearing people go, "Oh, you tap." So that's when I knew I was onto something. It seemed like I had an ailment to, okay, I
You
might
could
be
do
onto
this.
something.
It's a talent. The other thing I was going to tell you, and this is in regard to your longevity of career, and something I wholly believe in with regards to myself and people that get to do this for a living, is the luckiest ones are the ones that get paid for being who they are. And you know what I mean? Like, I come in every day and I am this person. I go home
Yeah.
to my wife and kids. I'm this person. I have a feeling that in a lot of regards, we get you through your acting, your comedy, your performance, all that stuff. That's just you being you. I mean, obviously you're an actor and you have to play parts, but ultimately it's you.
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Um, and take, because the reality is, I can play a character like Ari Gold for 10 seasons and I can not necessarily share the same ideology as a character
Very true.
and totally I'm a stage actor from Chicago and I do it because I love it. And I'm lucky, as you said, to get paid and not get paid sometimes. And Ari Gold is a businessman and he's all about the money. And there are parts of him that I admire and parts that I totally disagree with. And I had to whip myself up into a frenzy to play him. He is a real character. His name is Ari Emanuel. He represents Mark Wahlberg. He runs WME. He owns the UFC, the WWE, every three-letter name, maybe the FBI. We don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, he's a titan and a genius businessman, and I'm just an actor. So that's not who I am. But I have to access places in me that are authentic and plug it in without judging that character, even though, there's certain lines that, I stole a line that I heard and put it, Entourage was written and they took very little of my improv, if any, except let's hug it out, bitch. Shut up, Yoko, when I was talking to Lloyd. And this particular one where an actor came up to me and said, I haven't heard from you. And my character said, well, I don't represent talent, I represent temperature, and you're not hot. So why the fuck would I call you? Now, to me, that's a nightmare.
Oh,
That's my
100%.
nightmare. That's
Yeah.
literally my nightmare.
Yeah, to treat
I'm just
anyone
an
that way.
actor, and actors go through phases of being hot and cold. You know what I mean? And so I'm saying the words of someone who I don't agree with at all and is a gatekeeper. Someone who says that is not believing in the artist, knowing that if someone is good at what they do and they love to do what they do, there are going to be moments where they're cold, but they'll be back, you
Mhm.
know? So that's not me. You say I'm sharing pieces of myself. And that's what I unpack on stage at the Blue Room this weekend, Friday, Saturday night. Night's transition, by the way. Um, the fact that people get mistaken. Listen, I played that character authentically when people would scream, Ari, let's hug it out, bitch. I'm a douchebag because of you, bro. When they would scream that to me on the street, I used to get offended and then realize that, look, man, they just took to the character and I played him authentically. They think that I'm that character. That's I can't get angry because I'm misunderstood. That's a lot of wasted energy.
Yeah. And again, I think it also shows the knowledge that you have, and just because you play a character you don't agree with, once you gain that perspective of the whys and whats and hows, that gives us also power as human beings to be able to deal with people like that as we go on in our life too. When you have that perspective, whether you agree with them or not, because basically going back to what you said at the beginning, something that we're not doing very well right now is listening to each other. And that's really, everyone wants to throw up and start yelling before they actually sit down and take a second to listen and gain perspective. And that's all it
It,
is.
if someone, yeah, exactly. You take a breath, you take a beat. It's like, why are you so offended? If you really offended, that's something you haven't healed yet. That's on
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
because something outside shouldn't really affect
Nope.
your inner life. Man, we're getting deep,
We're getting
deep,
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 but we got
deep.
to get out of here because I
We're gonna
think
get some laughs this weekend.
you're
God
gonna
damn
get
it.
yelled at someone. So here's the bottom line that you took out of this very long conversation between Jeremy and I. He is in town at the Blue Room Comedy Club, downtown Springfield, Friday night, Saturday night. You know him, you love him. He's got some great projects coming up. Of course, I'm very excited to see the performance when it does come out. I'm very excited you're coming to town, and thanks for your breath of work, man. That's all. That's all I got.
Thank you, brother. I'll see you this weekend, Mike. Thank you.
Bet your ass you will. See you, bud.
All right. Have one crazy summer on me.
Oh, you know I will.
Thanks, buddy.
See you, man. Later.
See ya.